Welcome to the Brain Picker Pro Show, live from Lake Wiley, South Carolina. I'm Larry Goins. I'm really excited you guys are on. This is the show all about real estate, where we bring in people who are in the trenches, who are doing deals, who are having fun and making money. And today we have my good friend Keith Baker on from the Private Lender Podcast, the man, the legend, and the myth. And I can also say a student, right?
That is correct here. That is absolutely. I still have, let me get this for the camera, the ultimate buying and selling machine. My first piece of real estate education I ever bought about a decade or more ago.
Wow.
Not
That's
today,
awesome.
but yeah, it's so I'm not only, a student and a fan.
There you go. That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. That's cool. So, Keith, why don't you start out and tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm very lucky in life. Raised by parents who told me to go out and hustle. And if you want something, you got to go get it. So I currently, through many career changes, I ended up in doing insurance adjusting for the oil field. So I handle a lot of other people's money in my day job, and I have a piece of that company. So I'm quite content to go to the office and work. But I love real estate. I've always loved construction, and I've always tried to, since about 2002 or 3, try to have a hand in it. So I to stay when Hurricane Sandy came through in 12 and things got really busy, I shifted my focus over to private lending. That way I could still be investing. I could still be with investors, but I'm not running to a property to talk to a contractor or to, measure anything. And it's, no investment should be passive, but private lending is the most passive. And so the last, really about the last year and a half, I've been trying to put together the podcast, trying to teach people, one, that private lending is not only legal, ethical, and moral, but it's also allowed by the IRS and self-directed IRAs. And if you have a Roth, it's even better because it'll be tax-free. So that's really the gist. I do invest in some real estate. I have a partner who's a full-time investor, and we go in 50-50 with his infrastructure and my marketing budget, and we market heavily on the east side of Houston, and we try to wholesale and owner finance whenever we can. I like notes. I like paper. So I try to do the owner finance thing when I can. But I also like cash. That's not to say I won't turn down an assignment fee, but that's kind of the main business plan that I have. And that really kind of puts us, brings us up to today.
Well, being in Texas, there's more seller finance transactions in Texas than probably all the other states put together.
I knew it was a lot. I didn't realize, but we led the nation with it. But yeah, there's a lot of it going on.
Absolutely, a tremendous amount. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your business and or your podcast, and let's just kind of jump right in.
Sure. So the podcast, I saw that nobody was really, people would talk about how to raise private money for a flip or to do this, but nobody was teaching people how to be the private lender.
Right.
So I decided, okay, well, I'm a big fan of self-directed IRA custodians, like Quest, for example, here in Houston. And so I just started piecing together this podcast, and I really didn't understand what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do something. So on January 1st, I launched the first episode, and it's just released episode number 41. And it's, slowly but surely gaining traction. And the whole point of it is I'll do like one interview with somebody, whether they be a lender, someone who uses private money, or someone on the team, like a lawyer or an appraiser.
Right.
And then I try to do a solo cast where I'll take something, for example, we're foreclosing on a house that we're owner financing. So we originated the note. It unfortunately for this guy, he was a victim of Hurricane Harvey.
Right.
And we gave him a year. Look, just get right, get set. He didn't have flood insurance. Lesson learned for the lender right there.
Right.
Anytime you're near the coast, it's probably a good idea to and make sure the borrower has flood insurance, especially through a national flood insurance program. If they can't afford $400 or $450 for a flood insurance policy, it's probably not a deal, and you probably shouldn't be doing lending on it. But anyway, so I'm going through the step-by-step process of, okay, we just settled on the attorney we're going to use. Contacted him, give me your fee schedule. Unfortunately, rather than paying a retainer up front, our attorney is it's a pay-as-you-go. So we'll pay for the letter of default, for example, the notice of default, and go on. And so that's what I'm doing on the podcast as well. Is just going through every little thing, discussing it, and pulling off the Band-Aid and showing people where I screwed up so they don't do the same thing. They don't make bad decisions.
And you know what, man? That's really, really admirable, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of educators and gurus, so to speak, that all they're teaching, is, you know, sunshine and rainbows and all that stuff,
Yep.
and it's not the real world. I mean, I've lost as much as 75 grand on a deal before,
Mm-hmm.
2 times, right? 2 different deals. But I share those stories with people, and it's really admirable that you're sharing that and letting people know, man, it's not always win win win. Sometimes you're going to lose money, and that's one of the most expensive seminars you'll ever take, right?
Yes. Yeah, and those 3-day weekend seminars end up being months long and thousands of dollars. They can be. So that's I tell people I started the podcast. I'm going to start the academy, the Private Lender Academy, hopefully in the first quarter of 2019.
Right.
And right out of the gate, I'm going to do a video in front of my car that I call the Rent Collector. It's an '06 Nissan Sentra that I do. It's my daily driver. It's not a luxury car. There are no bikini clad models. I don't promise to make you rich overnight. You won't be sipping Mai Tais, but you will learn old world methods of creating and establishing wealth. And that's the whole goal. And if it means, if I have to tell you, look, I did a second position lien like an idiot on this property and I'm having trouble getting my money back.
Right.
Unfortunately for my wife and my kids, I have no problem making a fool of myself. So if I can give that to the the investing world and create an economy where we have private lenders and we don't need banks, then it's a win-win.
Most people that are doing a talking about private money, private lending, they're doing it from the perspective of how to raise private money, how to go out there and find people. But you're doing it from the perspective of, here's a way you can invest your money, and you're teaching people how to do it passively and how to be the private lender. That's a little bit different than most people, right?
Absolutely. Most people, when they talk to you about private lending or being a private lender, they want your money. They're looking for, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as they're upfront and saying, look, I have deals, I'm looking for private money, I don't have any issues. But nobody was showing the mechanics of that. Nobody was, peeling back the curtain and saying, this is how you do it. And I've got a question at a RIA one time, is it okay to use the title company's attorney? Absolutely is okay. I did it early on, but I wouldn't do it now, because that attorney doesn't represent me. It represents the title company. So I want an attorney that's going to represent me as the lender. And so that's the angle that I'm coming from is, yes, ultimately, do I want to monetize? Absolutely. But I enjoy the teaching. And if I can just get it out there that, look, there is a way you can do it safely. And, if I can help people avoid some of those seminars, then, all the better.
That's exactly right. Now, let's go through a little bit of the mechanics on this, because
Sure.
Now, especially you're in Texas, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, everywhere else except Texas, it's easier to do this, right? Especially like with seller financing, because you can do a land contract, or if like me, I sell properties on seller financing and lease options. In Texas, you can't do a lease option and you can't do a land contract. So you have to do a mortgage or deed of trust. I can't remember which it is in your state.
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
But you have to do that. So to me, it's kind of ironic that there's more seller financing done in Texas than all the other states, when Texas is a little more difficult to do it in. But quite frankly, it's probably a good thing, because now everybody makes sure they do it the right way. So explain a little bit about the mechanics of it.
Sure. And that's absolutely true. We lease options, after the great crash, things changed quite a bit, and we can no longer do sandwich lease options in Texas. And there are ways that you can do it, and I'm certainly not the expert. And we don't do land contracts. We do have a deed of trust that is, or let me backtrack. We'll have a promissory note, which is the mortgage, and then that promissory note goes along with a deed of trust that's filed at the county courthouse. And so that deed says, okay, Larry Goins is buying the property. Keith Baker is the lender. He has the first position lien. And that's my security that if anything goes sideways with your deal, I can go back and foreclose and get the property back and recoup some, if not all, of my funds.
Right.
Kind of worst case scenario. So that's how. So when we do a deal, we'll look at of course we'll look at the numbers. I look at three things: the people. In your case, that's not a whole lot of research I need to do there. You're pretty well known. Your process. Are you a flipper? Are you a landlord who's going to start flipping, or vice versa? What are you getting outside of your wheelhouse, basically, or out of your comfort zone? I want to see that, and then I want to look at the property, and then because it is asset based lending, and I'm not so much concerned with your credit report or your W-2. I want to see that if there's something goes wrong with the project, I can get my money back, I can recoup it, and I just want to see that if you take a 6-month loan, I want to see that you have 6 months in reserves that you can pay my payments.
Right.
That's it. Then we go to the lawyer, say, okay, lawyer, draft up the promissory note. Here are the conditions I want. Here's the deed of trust. Here are the triggers for default, non-payment, or if, for example, let's say somebody wants to go Walter White and Breaking Bad and start cooking drugs or something in the house, then there's a trigger in there for me to get out, to get my investment back and to get my hands free of anything like that. Right. So that's and then we go to closing. Then we close. The borrower signs the paperwork. I do 95% of my lending out of my self-directed IRA account with Quest. Sometimes it's cash, but I just send the wire instructions over to the title company, and then I get the executed documents, and I start looking for those payments on the first of every month.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, are you typically financing these deals to a fix and flip investor, or somebody who's going to move in the house long term, or maybe a long term landlord? Are they short term loans, long term loans?
The answer to all that is yes. So I have a bit of a mixed bag. When I started off, I'm the type of person that I want to get my hands dirty and get into it. So when I was 16 and my car broke down, I had no money for the mechanic. So I had to learn how to do it. So early on, I said, okay, I'm going to do fix and flips. I want to do 90 to 180 days, 3 to 6 months. And because I get higher interest, I could get more points. But then I realized that I was working an awful lot in between those loans trying to make that money work. So I do the fix and flips. I'd also do what I call acquisition money, where I have some investors who they're loved by their banks, the commercial lenders, loan officers, but a bank won't touch a house that's valued at about 45 cents on the dollar.
Right.
So they use my private money, acquire the home, rehab it, refi me out.
Right.
And then they've got a lower interest. But I also provide loans for people who like to do seller financing or owner financing. I'll take a lower interest rate for 3 to 5 years, and then they can wrap my mortgage to the end buyer, and they make the difference in between. And once they pay me off, then the payments are all theirs. I'm comfortable with that as long as the end buyer knows that I have a first position lien. And if something goes wrong, I can still reclaim my property and foreclose if need be. I've found that most people who are taking advantage of owner financing are more than okay with that. As long as everything's above board and the payments get made, there's no issues at all with that. I will sell or I will loan to people who go into the property to live, an owner occupant. Right. But as you know, we've got some at that point. It's no longer a business loan. Now it's a consumer loan.
Right.
And I'm not going to cuss the government for trying to protect people who are unaware, but it does become more and more difficult. So we'll have to vet that the end buyer through a residential mortgage loan originator, or RMLO, to make sure that we're compliant with Dodd-Frank and all the state laws, that we're not taking advantage of anybody, because there are some unscrupulous people out there. So I'd prefer not to do the seller financing, but I will do it if everything is disclosed and everything's above board. Then I don't have a problem doing it.
That's really good. So for the most part, your borrower is going to be an investor.
Correct.
Will fix and flip, or maybe they're going to seller finance the deal and deal with the consumer. So they have to comply with Dodd-Frank, not you.
Correct. But then I have to manage, or I have to monitor their compliance. I don't have to comply, but I as my due diligence, I monitor their compliance.
Good. So you make sure they use an RMLO and comply with Dodd-Frank.
Yes.
Do you have a good RMLO that you like to use?
I do. Sarah Montez at Texas Pride Lending out of Dallas.
Yeah. I love those guys. They used to do it all over the country, and man, they could get one done in like 4 hours, right? From the time you send it to them, right?
Yeah, like you give them all the information, and the borrower would pay down the deposit, and then we're getting an email. Here you go. Here's your package. Here are all the documents you need for closing. It's like, whoa.
It's like a document that's like, 4 feet long, like 20 or 30 pages or more.
Yeah, exactly. Your printer's going to be working overtime when you print that out. But yeah, it's I've always used them, and my partner and I have always used them when we've originated our own loans with seller financing. And yeah, we like them a lot.
That's really good. I love it, man. I love it. So even with the now you want to make sure that your borrower is in compliance with Dodd-Frank because they're dealing with consumers. What about servicing? Because now they've got their borrower that's making a payment, and part of that payment they're getting to keep, but the other part comes to you to pay you. So do you service it? Do you have a third party servicer?
I used to service all my notes myself. I had a spreadsheet that I would track. Of course, I was only doing, I only had 2 or 3 loans out at a time at that point, so it wasn't that much work. But I've come to learn to demand third-party servicing for several reasons. One, they handle the amortization schedule, so I don't have to do the math. I like very simple math. That's why I love interest-only loans. Because if you borrow $100,000 from me, you're going to pay, at 12% annual, you're going to pay me $1,000 a month, and at the end of that note, you're going to give me my $100,000 back. That's easy, simple math. You don't even need to go to junior high for that. And by the way, for full disclosure, I failed business math 4 times in college. So dropped or failed it 4 times. So bit of a slacker, liberal arts student. But anyway, I like the third party because they do the amortization. They send out any notices if they're late. They're the ones that take care of the 1099 at the end of the year, telling the borrower how much interest they've paid versus how much principal. But more importantly, if let's say I get into a bind and I've got this note and I'm going to have to sell it at a bit of a discount, if it's serviced with a third party note servicer, it's got more value. It's easier for me to dispose of that note than it is. Hey, here's my spreadsheet that I've kept together over the last year or 2.
It's more credible.
Absolutely more credible. Yeah. And it's usually, somewhere, $15 to $35 a month, or $50 if they want credit repair. I let the borrower decide on that, but I do demand that it's serviced by a third party.
Good. Do you have any specific ones that you could recommend or share?
Actually, I'm in between right now, and rather than sharing who I wouldn't use, there's a few I'll tell you this, there's a few that I've used, and I'm blanking on the one that I'm going to now, but in my community there's Mills Escrow out of El Paso, there's Moat Note Servicing out of San Antonio,
I've heard of them.
And I'm totally blanking on the guys in Louisiana that we're using. I apologize because they've been great. Not that Mills and Moat aren't great, but these guys have really stepped up for us. And then there's Jeff Skiller, and if you have someone who needs credit repair, so like if they're getting into, they want to be able to refinance out of my note, then it's more expensive. It's $50 a month. However, he reports every month to the credit bureau, so that borrower is going to get, the benefit of that increased credit worthiness.
Right. That's good. That's good. We just had a guy on that specializes in credit repair as well on this show. So that's good. That is really good. So I understand where you're at with being in between servicers, because doing a lot of seller financing myself, the servicers, in my opinion, are a necessary evil, and I try to find the best of the worst. Right?
Yeah. And then their defense, the way I look at it, I can't keep up with all my notes, and I have a handful. I don't have a database full of notes and everything. So, if I can't even keep up with mine, then I feel like I should be a little understanding with the services. But at the same time, that's their job. So
there you go.
you know, that
That's true. That's
balance.
true. I want to dive a little bit into the three categories you look at, right? The people, the process, and the property. Let's
Okay.
dive a little bit in there. What do you look for in the person, the people part of it?
I look for doers, action takers. I try to avoid the tire kickers if at all possible.
Right.
I'm happy to talk to anybody, but when it gets down to that serious, let's talking terms. I want to see where they are, how advanced they are. Are they getting their ducks in a row? And I said earlier, is this person a landlord who wants to be a flipper, or it's very popular right now to take rental properties and convert them into seller financed homes.
Right.
Right. So that's not a red flag for me, because that just tells me this guy or this gal is getting wise. Doesn't want to deal with toilets. Doesn't want to deal with the calls at 2 a.m. Doesn't want to hear about, oh, I'm a little short this month. Doesn't matter. They take a lot of the headaches out by converting that property from a rental into a seller financed property. So I look at them, look at their background. I tend to like people who are, would be a great engineer had they had the desire to be one, but never took that path. They're detail oriented. They're going to dot their I's and cross their T's. I like to look for that. I also like to look for track record. Have they, how many deals have they done? How many deals of this particular type have they done? If, like I said, if this is their first flip, I'm happy to recommend a few hard money companies to go out there until they've got 5 or 10 deals under their belt that are successful. They can build up their portfolio, because that hard money company is going to look at that deal a lot harder than I am. And that's an extra benefit to the borrower, that they have an extra set of eyes on top of their deal.
Right.
However, they are more expensive. They're going to be more points. There's going to be more interest rates. And if they have to modify the loan or extend it, it's going to be a little bit pricey. However, that's just a cost of doing business, especially when you're starting out. And so that's what I look for in the people. The process it goes back to the people. What are they, landlords? Are they flippers? Are they newbies? Are they, has this guy got a 200 door single family rental portfolio, and now he wants to get into commercial or multifamily or whatever the deal may be? I look at that person. Okay, well, if you're doing a big multifamily deal, you're probably not doing it alone. So now I go from the individual to the team that's putting it all together. I look at them, see what's what their comfort zones are, what they're comfortable doing, what they've done in the past, what they've built their portfolio with. And then after I'm comfortable with the people and what they're going to do with the property, then I'll go look at the property. Well, you don't have to, but I like to teach anyone starting off as a private lender, go touch and see every single property that you're going to loan on. If they say there's a house on the land, make sure there's a house on the land. Make sure the address is correct. Right. Go up, get permission from the owner. Just don't show up and say, hey, I have a right to be here, because you really don't. But get it through whoever owns it, set it up, make your trip legal. But I like to say, walk it, see it, touch it, taste it, smell it. And then if you're comfortable with that, the people, their process, and the property. So basically, when you're looking at the property, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, am I okay foreclosing and owning this property? And if you're not, walk away. If you are, then proceed. But if you're not comfortable with owning that property in the shape that it's in right then and there, before any rehab, any repairs, then that's your litmus test. That's the final green light, so to speak, to go ahead and look at the loan, make sure the numbers are good, and because I've loaned on houses. I've loaned as little as $15,000 on a house that I told the buyer, I said, just stick a match to it, but don't file it on insurance, because that'll be fraud. But this thing needs to go. And he turned around, owner financed it, and it's one of the better looking houses in the neighborhood now.
Wow.
I mean, absolutely amazing. And yeah, he borrowed 22 from me and sold it for 45. So as far from a loan to value, that was pretty good numbers there for me. I was comfortable being well under 65-70%. And yeah, and that borrower, the end buyer, I should say, the owner occupant, never missed a payment. The last time I drove by, it's got a new roof, brand new siding, new landscaping, brand new carport. It just looks great. And that's the asset, that's the collateral for my investment, is just being improved. little by little.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, it's great. I mean, so if, God forbid something happens to that guy. Yet, do I want that house? Absolutely, I take that house back in a heartbeat. The only problem is my investor, who borrowed the money for me to seller finance, he's going to take it.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
and he's going to make sure I get paid, so I can't default on him. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I look at: the people, their process, and then the property.
I love what you said. It's so important. I mean, we do a lot of private lending as well. We used to broker it. In other words, we would find other people that wanted to get a return on their money, and we would loan it out, and we would keep the points.
Mhm.
But now we just use our own money, like you're teaching and training as well. And we always look for experience. Number one,
Yeah.
I want somebody with a track record. I don't care if you've been through bankruptcy because of a downturn market or you went through a horrible divorce. I want somebody, because I know bad things happen to good people, right? And you know
Sure.
that well. So we want somebody that has some experience. We will not loan to a first-time flipper.
Nope.
We absolutely will not. And I'm sure you're the same way.
Yes. Yeah, go get some hard money, and I'll be happy. And I don't get any money or referrals or affiliate links, fees.
Right.
But it's because it's what's best for that investor, that
Right.
first time flipper. You're better off going to a hard money, because they're going to tell you this is not a deal. Stay away.
Right. And if
Yeah.
a hard money lender tells you this is not a deal, you don't need to buy that product. You don't need to look for another lender. What you
No.
need to do is look for another deal.
Yep. Or modify that deal and say, look, I can't get financing. This is out of, the numbers are too skewed. Can I get a lower price? Can I
Right.
get within that loan to value range? If you can't, you're right. Absolutely right. Go move on down to the street. Find another
That's so
property.
true. That's so true. A hard money lender is a good mentor or coach to let you know whether or not you got a good deal.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep. And yeah, that's a great way of putting it. There's no boot camp. There's no funnel. It's automatic. You have a property. We have money. Is this a deal? Yeah, we'll loan on this.
Right.
Or we won't. Or we'll loan on it, but you need to bring an extra 5 or 10 grand to the table to make sure that loan to value is in their comfort zone. So that means it's a pretty good deal. It's just the numbers are a little high. So if you're willing to put your own cash into it, then maybe you proceed. But if they're saying, you got to bring 15 grand to the table, you might want to reconsider whether or not you have a deal there.
And that's a really, really good point, because if they're telling you need to bring more money to the table, then that's a good sign that you're paying too much for the property, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That's exactly right. That's it. Now, tell us a little bit about the property. About what are your terms? What kind of LTV, interest rate, points, that sort of thing do you do?
Okay, everything is not to be vague or to sound like a CPA, but it depends.
Right.
But so I like on a fix and flip. If I basically have two prices. I have my friends and mentors that I've grown up with in the real estate investing world. I will go as low as 10% with them, no points.
Uh-huh.
But I usually get a little something on the back end. Right. I still keep my triggers in place. I require monthly payments, not full, but I require some payments, because I want to make sure everything's moving along smoothly. And if they do get in trouble, I have an out. But a normal fix and flip, I'm 12%, 1 or 2 points, give or take. I will go down as low as I've gone down as low as 8% on some owner finance deals.
Uh-huh.
But I have some verbiage in the contracts to where when they get refinanced, I'll get a little, I get a little something, a little kicker on the back end there. Not to take anything away from anybody, but it's and look, 8% is, most stockbrokers they have to get their clients 6%. And that's how they're judged. If they can, and most of them can't even meet what the market's doing, what the Dow's doing. So
right.
the way I look at it, I'm getting 8% a year. It's not crazy money. It's not great money, but I don't have to work that money.
Right.
I know I'm getting consistent returns for the next 3 or 5 years or whatever the terms are. I tend to keep my notes anywhere from 3 to 5 years on the owner finance side. I love fix and flippers. I love those people. They're the craps and the blackjack players at the table. They're in, they're out, boom, boom, boom. It's a business. It's a grind. And, and I tell everyone, if you watch Chip and Joanna, go Waco. Oh, and by the way, go Astros. Or you ate Home and Garden TV, and it just looks great. It's a business. It's a grind.
It is.
It is. I mean, and you of all people can tell. I mean, because you're in the trenches day in and day out. I mean, I consider myself a dabbler because I I go in the morning, I put one hat on, in the afternoon I got another hat, and in the evening I got my headphones on with the podcast. But
Right.
it's a grind. It's not easy. So doing that method, I'd like the 6-month loans, anywhere from 10 to 12%. I've gone as high as 15%. When I started off, I took the attitude, if you find somebody charging more interest than me, please let me know, because I wanted to match the highest return.
Right.
But then I've learned that what's best for the deal at the end of the day.
Sure.
Yes, I want my money, but I don't. I bought my first rental property because a guy wanted me to refinance his rental with private money, and I said, "There's no way. You got a bank loan at 5% with a balloon. He couldn't get any more mortgages in his name." So I ended up buying it from him because if I refinanced it at my terms that I'd want,
right,
he would cash flow literally $22 a month. That's it. So it made no sense to do it that way. I said, look, I won't lend it, but I'll buy it from you.
Right.
So and that, my friend, was my seminar.
There
when
you
I bought
go.
that house. I was up. I rolled the windows down the day I sold that property, and I was free. That was. I'm a horrible landlord, and I know that now. But anyway, I digress.
No. That's okay. You know what? I tell people all the time. I'm a firm believer. You gotta do in real estate what you enjoy doing. Otherwise, you won't be in it very long, because it is. I mean, there's real estate as an investment and as a business. Somebody who can just write a check and be the lender. I mean, that's an investment, right?
Correct.
That's an investment. But if you're doing fix and flips or fix and rent or whatever, I mean, that's a grind, like you said, and you're in the trenches doing deals. And I mean, we're in the trenches doing deals. I had to leave a property meeting to come in here and record this podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, we've got about 28 properties under contract right now. Now we do two things: wholesale and seller finance, right? Or lease option deals, which you guys can't do lease options there. But let's talk a little bit about the equity participation you do. You called it the back end, which is also known as equity participation loans. What type of kicker or equity participation or back end do you get whenever you're lending money and you're getting a piece of the action?
I gauge it with my minimum is 5%. I'm going to get a 5% piece now
of the profit.
Now, everyone's paid off. My note's paid off. Everyone's paid, and then the profit, I'll get 5%. Now, a lot of folks have built up enough credibility where they have friends that are private lenders who don't require any interest payments every month.
Right.
And for me, that's a red flag, because one, that borrower has really got they better be Larry Goins if they're doing that, number one, because they really need to know what they're doing. But number two, that takes away one of my triggers to protect my investment.
Right.
Let's say I do a 6-month loan with no interest payments, and in week one, something horrible happens to that borrower. Right.
Right.
Catastrophic event, either to the property or to the borrower. I have to wait 6 months to foreclose. So now there's 6 months of an empty house. It's probably going to be vandalized. If there's any copper anywhere near it, it's going to be gone. I mean, the AC coils are gone. And I've seen people even rip apart walls to get, some Romex out off the studs. So
right.
There's that 6-month window. I don't like doing that. But what I will do, though, is if it is somebody, I will say, okay, look, I tell you what, instead of paying let's do simple math. A 12% loan is 1% every month due in interest. Maybe I'll take less of that on the front end.
Right.
I get that. I get made whole on the back end. So I'm still going to get my 12% for that time period, but then I'll get maybe 7% of the profit,
right,
or 5% of the profit. And they always try to talk me down to 2 or 3%. And I say, well, if you can find someone who'll do it, that's fine. But that's what I like to be comfortable. I don't want to take money out of anybody's hands, but I don't want to leave money on the table either at the same time.
Sure.
So there's that balancing act. So I usually use equity participation when they want some type of concession on the front end. Then I want to make sure that I get made whole on the back end. And I've been assigned interest in LLCs, or I prefer to put it into the paperwork, notarized and everything, and drawn up by the lawyers. And that's how I prefer to do it. If the deal is just screaming, okay, so like, let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say you've got a property That's 5 years old. Still got all the bells and whistles that everybody wants inside. And somehow, some way, you pick it up for 40 cents on the dollar, right? And you got to put like 10 grand into it. I would still do a draw. So I wouldn't give you the full, 50 or 55 grand.
Right.
We still have to do the draw, make sure the repairs are done. Because I never pay for a repair until I know it's done and done properly. But at that point, if we're all in it, 50, 55% LTV or lower, and I've been in those situations, then yeah, it's like, give me $100 a month on the interest payment, and then on the back end, let's get your pencil out. Let's figure this, because I'll close tomorrow. I will have money in the in escrow tomorrow, ready to go. If it's a screaming deal, so that's why I say it depends. It really depends on the person. It's like, you could bring me a screaming deal and we close tomorrow. My neighbor could come to me and I'd tell him to go get a hard money loan. Even if it's a screaming deal. Right. Now if he came to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to partner with Larry on this," now it becomes a screaming deal for me. Because now I've got a mentor whose reputation is on the line, in addition to my money, and that to me that's a nice bit of risk mitigation there.
Experience is everything.
Yep,
it really is. I don't care if they've gone through a downturn, been through a bankruptcy, divorce, whatever. A couple of things we do 12% and 5 points. It's a 12-month loan, but they're going to pay a renewal at 6 and 9 months. In other words, they've got an incentive to pay it off in 6 months, because on that 7th month, if they want to keep it, they pay 2 points, right?
There you go.
In payments, right?
Mm-hmm.
It comes with that payment. If they want that loan, they're either going to pay it off in month 7 or pay an extra 2 points along with the payment. And we do charge monthly payments as well. But we do a background check and an appraisal. We do get an appraisal. I know a lot of private lenders don't do that, but because we loan all over the Carolinas, we do get an appraisal just to make sure, right?
You aren't just lending in your backyard. Your area, yeah. So though it's I think the beauty of private lending is the personal one-on-one. Right. However, yeah, if a deal is a deal is a deal. So if it's a deal in Lake Wiley, then it's probably going to be a deal in some other place, but you're not there.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely get an appraiser. I like to get a panel of 3. I'll let the borrower choose one of those 3. They can call them, interview them, whatever. Sure. But they're my appraiser. They're not their appraiser.
Right.
Because they're gonna I look at an appraisal a little differently, especially like if it's going to be a rental. I discount it, because if I have to do a quick sale, I can't use ARV. I can't go to the MLS.
That's right.
And say, hey, this is a $90,000 house. Well, it's a rental, and it's really maybe 75 tops. So I like to work with appraisers who aren't just bank appraisers, but they have an investment mindset. Yeah,
they get it.
They get it, exactly. And so if it's a fix and flip, then yeah, let's what type of crown molding, what type of granite, what are the bells and whistles? Let's get down to it. And but yeah, I do like appraisal, especially with people I don't know. It's just but I tell people, go to RIA meetings, go to IRA, self-directed IRA meetups, do all the meetups, and start meeting people. Your network is your net worth. At the end of the day, it is so true.
That's so true. That is so true.
So so when people come up to me and say, "Look, I don't know them from Adam," I'll say, "Look, I'm going to have to get an appraiser. You're going to have to pay I'm sorry, but it's going to be an extra $400 on this." But if it's a screaming deal, and that right there is a great test, because if they're balking on $400, then what are they worried about?
You don't want to loan them money anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, if it's that great of a deal, why are you concerned about it? The appraisal should be fine then. Right. If it's that great of a deal. So sure. There's this little hints and little things, like ways you can screen people out, from, and they might just be a tire kicker, like, hey, I kind of want to do this. And I'm, like I said, I'm happy to talk with anybody, but if you want to talk about underwriting or getting the note originated, then I want to know you're serious, and I'm not going to be spinning my wheels or my lawyer's wheels or anybody.
Exactly. Exactly. That's good. You do a lot of lending in self-directed IRA and work with a lot of people that do that. And I know you use Quest. I know Quincy and Nathan really good. They're great guys. They do a tremendous amount of education, right?
Oh,
they really do. I'm involved in the Financial Friends Network, which Quincy's involved in quite a bit. And was just at their expo, a few weeks ago, and you and I saw each other there.
Yep.
And So tell us a little bit about using a self-directed retirement account. Do you loan right out of the account? Do you use an LLC or a trust, or how do you do that?
I loan right out of my accounts. I don't loan in the LLCs, and I know there are arguments for the the checkbook control LLC, so on and so forth. Going back to, I like to get my hands dirty. I like to see all the mechanics of it first. And as Quest is going over to Quest Trust now, there's
Right.
going to be some changes. So I will be right now. My personal mission is I'm loaning only out of my self-directed IRAs and my wife's self-directed IRAs. And here's the beautiful thing: my two kids who are minors are contractors for the podcast. So as long as they earn reportable income, then they can invest in a Roth IRA.
Right.
So when they're making bandit signs for daddy, or stuff in envelopes, or doing whatever, and I pay them, and yes, I pay them slave wages, but I pay them, I cut that check, it goes into their Roth IRA, and it starts building right there. And I use it. But when I started, I took a bunch of old 401ks, like most Generation Xers. I didn't go to work for one company for 25 years. I bounced around. I had all these 401ks, so I just consolidated them into two. I had an IRA at Scottrade, so that I could. That was my gambling money. I could be a day trader, which means I just got my butt handed to me day after day after day. And I also opened up one on my IRAs with Quest, and so little by little, I've been converting money from my traditional IRA for me and my wife into Roth IRAs.
Right.
And I basically do that with every transaction. So if I loan 50 grand out, only 45 will go back into my traditional IRA. I put 5 into the Roth, and little by little, and this way I can do it without a big tax bill at the end of the year. And it does. You really need to talk to a CPA about it, because I converted 25 grand and forgot that I did it. And come April 15th, I was not pleasantly surprised that I owed money. I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean? And so my CPA had to explain, well, you converted to your Roth. So I'm slowly but surely doing everything over to Roth. And then once that is complete, and I'm, there's not tax is not an issue, then I'm going to look into the more advanced self-directed IRA systems, checkbook control, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and the solo 401k maybe, and we also have a HSA, health savings account, and an ESA.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Those are really good as well.
Absolutely. The education savings account, the health savings account, and you just, with the cost of college and Medicare, or private schools or whatever, they're great tools that are available to us, and you can be a private lender out of them, and you can combine. You can, if your kid has an education savings account, you can take your wife's health savings account and my IRA, and now between the three of us, we have enough money to go fund the deal.
Right. You can partner.
Exactly. We can definitely partner with ourselves, with other people, and it's not that difficult. It's just, get your percentages, so, this account has X percentage of the deal, so on and so forth. Make sure it totals up to 100%, and then make sure the payments are dispersed along that schedule of interest. And the IRS is completely comfortable and happy with it.
Absolutely. And that, guys, listen, that's a very advanced technique, in my opinion, especially for a newbie. So if you plan on doing any kind of partnering with your ESA, IRA, HSA, whatever, make sure you speak with your own advisor first, because if you do what's called a prohibited transaction, like maybe your ESA, HSA, and IRA all partner, but then maybe you collect rent and you put all that rent into your IRA, that would be a prohibited transaction, and it would blow up all three accounts, right?
Yes. And taxes would be due right then and there.
Yeah, and the IRA, ESA, and HSA would cease to exist.
Correct.
Right? And then you would have to pay penalties and taxes on all that money. So make sure you know what you're doing before you go and try to do that thing. I intentionally never, ever, ever partner with any of my other accounts. If I want to do that, if I don't have enough money, I'll go to someone like Keith and say, Keith, let's you and I partner on a deal. I found the deal. You put up the money. We'll partner on the deal. I get X percent and you get X percent. It doesn't have to be X percent based on who put up how much money. We could buy a $50,000 house. I put up 5, or my IRA put up 5, and Keith put up 45,000, but we're still splitting it 50-50 because I found the deal.
Correct.
Right? So that's the way I personally prefer to do it. But you can partner with your other accounts. Just make sure you know what you're doing, guys.
Absolutely. Right? That's well said, because that most of the times my loans with Quest go through very quickly. The time that I partnered, my Roth, my traditional, and my wife's traditional, we got more pushback on the documents to make sure they were absolutely perfect, spot on. And then when the payments came in, I had to have a payment coupon from that borrower saying, this is how the payment is to be split amongst the accounts, to whatever that split was. Because like you said, even if a tenth of a point goes into this account, it can become prohibited, and you just blew everything out of the water. And so, I like what you did there. Is partner with other people, because, I mean, prime example, you find a smoke. Let's say you find a smoking. Let's say I was in Savannah recently, my first time in Savannah, Georgia, which was interesting. But my day job, I had to go out there. But let's say you find a smoking hot deal right off of the river there, and you're short of cash. You call me up, hey Keith, you got some money in the IRA? Yeah, well, okay, I'm going to lock this up with a $5,000 deposit. You fund the close. I'm going to flip it or whatever, fix it up, and then here we go. The paperwork comes between us. We DocuSign, or we can even do old school FedEx and all that stuff. But we get the paperwork in order. We get our understanding established. Money changes hands, and business goes on. And that is the economy that I'm talking about. That's what the alternative economy. And I don't have a cute catchphrase for it yet, but I will someday. But that's exactly that joint venturing, that partnering is such a powerful wealth building tool.
That's so true. That is so true. Man, I really appreciate everything you shared. This has been awesome. Really good stuff.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on, and I look forward to having you on the Private Lender Podcast very soon when schedules allow. And I'd love to have you come on and just share your knowledge, because, like I said, I mean, I don't pack rat stuff all the time, but I keep stuff that's good. And so, Larry, I mean, thank you. We haven't had that much one-on-one interaction, but I remember I used to get your newsletters. You would physically mail out newsletters.
We used to,
every month. And I mean, I learned so much about real estate through you. And to me, it's an honor and a privilege to be on your Brain Pick a Pro podcast.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I'm really proud of what you're doing, man. You're rocking it. You're rocking it.
Appreciate it.
That's awesome. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they get in touch with you?
They can go to privatelenderpodcast.com is the website, or they can email me, Keith, Keith, at privatelenderpodcast.com. And hopefully by the time this airs, I will have the privatelenderacademy.com, where you can go and sign up. I'm going to release the course in January. I'm looking for beta testers, and I might even just do the first one for free anyway, just to get people comfortable with the idea of private lending. So privatelenderpodcast.com or privatelenderacademy.com is where you can find me. And of course, you can listen like you, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, anywhere podcasts are published. You can go and subscribe for free.
That's awesome, man. I really, really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a great podcast. And guys, go over and subscribe to this podcast. Listen to it. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. And I want to, if I can crowbar real quick, everyone listening, go to iTunes or wherever, Stitcher, SoundCloud, pull up Larry's podcast, give a rating and review while you're there. This guy's been giving out tons of valuable content for decades. Podcasts are free, but it does take time and money to produce. So go out, give him a rating and a review. Even if just give him 5 stars. Just do it for me. Just do it for me.
You're right, man. You know what? I never ask people to do that, and we hardly have any. And I never ask people to do it. You know, I should be doing that on every podcast. I should be doing that.
Yeah, you don't get it unless Scott Carson taught me that. He at the very end, he crowbarred. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt, but hey, go give a rating and review. So, yeah, please do that. And Larry, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You've made my day.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right, man. You take care.
All right, you too.